This here is my 2008 Mazda 3 and I've owned it for the past 9 months and had a full licence on it for the past 3 months. That's plenty of time then to tell you whether you should spend your own money on one too. Let's get into the review. First thing to talk about is the exterior design. Now, back in 2008, this car would have been against cars like the Mark V Vauxhall Astra, the Toyota Auris, the Mark 8 Honda Civic, the Mark II Seat Leon, and of course the Mark II Ford Focus, which this car is actually based on. Obviously, this is all subjective, but I would pick the Mazda 3 for the styling out of the bunch. It does a good job of looking quite imposing with its nice wide haunches, and the boot spoiler is a nice addition, but it is worth pointing out that a TS or a TS2 spec car won't come with stuff like the boot spoiler, nice alloys, and aggressive bumpers. So if you want your Mazda 3 to stand out more, you're going to have to go for the Takara spec, the Tamura spec, or the Sport specification. The inside of this car is my favourite part about it, and for very good reason. Firstly, there's the build quality. There aren't any creaks or any rattles when you're driving around. And the piano black inserts, we've got some here, up here, on the door over here, all feel really nice quality, and they don't scratch badly like in a Mercedes. This is 16 years old, and I don't see any scratches on any of the piano black. And the quality also extends to the rear of the car. We've got more piano black inserts over there, and generally all the plastics feel a similar quality to the ones in the front. There are a couple bits of iffy plastics, like on the glove box. You can see it's scratched ever so slightly there as well, but it's only a minor criticism that. The next thing I like about the interior is the general design. When Parkers reviewed the Mazda 3, they criticised the interior design for being too dated, but personally, I think it's aged really well. If you compare the inside of a Ford Focus to this, I think the Mazda 3 has far more of a sophisticated and timeless look. One cool feature is when you increase the volume, I'll just demonstrate this right now. These LED lights go up and down depending on whether you're increasing or decreasing the volume. A second favourite piece of design is the fabric used on the door trim and on the seats. As you can see here, it's got this really subtle red woven effect, which I think looks really classy. By the way, the seats are super comfortable in the front and the rear. I've never had any bum or backache, which is more than can be said for my dad's BMW 7 Series. The final great feature has to be the dials. I'm just going to show you the dials here. And they're enclosed in these sort of tube effect things, which looks really sporty, especially at night when they're backlit. If I just turn the lights on right now, it's quite bright out today, but at night it'll have this like red glowing effect, which makes it really easy to read, which is one bonus, but also looks incredibly cool. In terms of ergonomics, the Mazda 3 scores okay. For adjusting the fan speed and temperature, you have these big chunky knobs, which are nice and easy to operate, no complaints there. And for adjusting the direction of the fan flow, you've got this sort of rotary dial thing here, which is fairly easy to operate. Some of the buttons are a little bit low down, like the aircon and the heated rear windscreen. I prefer that if they were higher up because the gear stick gets in the way, but yeah, it's not the end of the world. On the steering wheel, we have some nice easy volume buttons and changing tracks, etc. So they're nice and easy to use, and they're not touch sensitive like in a VW or whatever, so that's a bonus. And if you were on a higher spec car, like the Sport model, you'd have all your cruise control buttons up here, which would be nice and easy to operate. In terms of spec, you get more than you could ever realistically need. This Takara spec has electric windows all round, it has aircon, front and rear fog lights, and it also has an excellent audio system, even though this doesn't have the optional Bose audio. There are a couple little quirks as well, like how the fact if you hold down this button, and this button here, number 2, it shows you the quality of the radio signal. So as you can see, this one is very poor connection. It says level 2, but if I change the radio station to this one here, that's terrible. Let me try a better one. That's got a far better level of connection. Still not great, but I thought that was quite a cool feature. I don't think many cars have that. The other cool thing you can do is if you hold down this button again, and this one down here, it gets the audio to circulate around the car in a circular motion. That's another cool feature, I guess. Quite a fun little party trick. There's also a 6 CD player. Unfortunately in this car it doesn't work. I don't really use CDs, so that's not the end of the world. But more importantly to me, there's an auxiliary point inside this central cubby. That central cubby brings me on to practicality. As you can see, lots of space in there. And some space in this top section to store glasses, your phone, etc. Decent sized door bins in the front. Decent sized glove box. And some small little door bins in the rear. The best thing about the rear though is the space you get. I am 6'1" or so, and I have plenty of head and leg room in the rear over here. As you can see, plenty of leg room, and I don't know if I can demonstrate headroom, but I'd say I've got about 1.5 inches of headroom, which is more than you can ever need. You also get this nice little armrest which comes down. Feels very plush. That's another thing I didn't mention in the quality. The seats, the quality of the fabric on the seats is excellent. It's super plush. It doesn't show any signs of wear really. I mean, look at this. I can't see any signs of wear. So that is another good point about the car. Next talking point for practicality is of course the boot. Let's hope there's not any rubbish in there. Not too much rubbish in there. The size of the boot is 346 litres, which is more than you get in a Volkswagen Golf. And the seats fold 60-40, which is nice and handy, rather than folding as a single panel. They don't fold flat though, that's one thing to point. One thing I don't like about the boot though is how the rear bumper protrudes quite some distance from the main boot, which means loading stuff into the car is a little bit harder, especially if you're older. And unlike most of its rivals, I think I've already mentioned this, you can't get the Mazda 3 as an estate. You can get the Ford Focus as an estate, Vauxhall Astra as an estate, pretty much all the rivals as an estate. I would prefer an estate to the saloon which you got offered with the Mazda 3, but whatever. This is the hatchback review, so that's not the main talking point. In terms of engine choices, there's a 1.4, which wasn't very popular and could only be had in the entry-level trim, which also wasn't very popular. This car only produces 84 horsepower. By far the most popular engine is the 105 brake horsepower 1.6 litre engine, which is what I have in my car. It's a very refined engine and returns good MPG. With mine mostly town driving, it will do 36 MPG. 0 to 60 takes 11.2 seconds, which is slower than most of its rivals, but for me at least, it's more than enough power. The top spec 2 litre petrol with 150 brake horsepower is pretty fast, doing 0 to 60 in 9.1 seconds. It also gets a 6th gear, which would make it a lot more relaxing on a motorway than my 1.6, which is quite high in the rev range when you're doing 70 miles an hour. There are also diesels on offer. There's a 1.6 with 90 or 109 horsepower, as well as a 2 litre diesel with 143 horsepower. The 1.6 are apparently good for 60 mpg, and the 2 litre diesel can apparently do 45 mpg. To drive, the Mazda 3 is excellent. It's based on the Ford Focus, so this doesn't really come as a surprise. The steering feels really natural, it grips the road well, and there's no body lean, well, pretty much no body lean. The pedals themselves line up really well with the driver, and the mid-gear acceleration is strong. The gears themselves are really nice and satisfying to shift through, but in traffic I could see why the slightly heavier clutch pedal and the more tight gear shifts can get a little bit tiring. At lower speeds, the ride is also a little firm, and the suspension creates quite a lot of noise, but at higher speeds it's fairly quiet and the ride is far plusher. In terms of cost, the Mazda 3 has proven itself very good for a young 17-year-old driver like myself. With a black box, it costs between £1,400 and £1,500 a year to insure. That's definitely a lot cheaper than comparable cars like the Vauxhall Astra. Road tax is £265 a year, which is the same as most cars in this segment. Just like the Ford Focus it's based on, the Mazda 3 should prove itself to be pretty reliable. Parts are everywhere if you do need them, and they shouldn't cost that much either. The big thing to look out for is rust. When looking to buy this Mazda 3, most of the other ones on Auto Trader had rust issues all over the MOT history. But how much should you pay for one? Well, prices start at £800 for a low spec example with around 130,000 miles on the clock. Increase your budget to £1,500 to £2,000 to get yourself a low spec one with around 70,000 miles on the clock. And if you want a new one like mine with 50,000 miles on the clock in fairly high spec Takara trim, you'll need £2,500 to £3,000. My car was £2,600 with 2 owners, excellent MOT history but no service history. Automatics charge a premium of around £500 to £1,000. A Takara or Tamura spec car is a good middle ground, but there aren't any compelling ones on Auto Trader at the moment. As for the sport model with the 2-litre engine, it would be my choice if insurance wasn't an issue. Overall, should you buy the Mazda 3? For me, it's an easy yes. It's a great all-rounder which leans on the side of sportiness. The same is also true of the Ford Focus, but I think the Mazda 3 is a little bit more desirable, especially on the inside, than that car.